Today's story was written by Reddit user SherbertSpare8944. Some say the Juri were born from the early Druidic religion, that they must do their work in secret to avoid persecution. These stories and myths seem to track closely with descriptions of the Druids, the original tenets of Druidism. There are verbose descriptions of grand religious ceremonies, dancing, and festivities as they celebrate the life their gods have given them. Some tell of immense galactic-sized peace treaties they have brokered between man and alien. There are also those myths which describe an immortal people, untouchable by known technology, a group who stands between innocents and those who would do them harm, an unstoppable army summoned by the cries of victims, and one which, once called, will stop at nothing until those responsible are punished. The reality is surprisingly close to the legends. When the Romans began to slaughter their group in the early history of mankind, the remaining Druids went into hiding. Over the years, their influence could be seen as they tendered treaties between nations, passed judgments in The Hague, even dropped into war-torn countries to negotiate hostage releases. As humans advanced technologically, this group began to expand, freed from fears of religious persecution. As they grew, they began to look outward and continue the work of their ancestors, acting as advisors, peacekeepers, and where necessary, bringing the perpetrators of heinous war crimes to justice. In time, this group became the Juri. They came on wings of fire. Their capsules plunged through the upper atmosphere, their number so great it darkened the sky. A halo of flames lit each of the blackened eggs as they fell through the surface. Their whistling drowned out the battlefield below as they streaked through the noonday sky. To a soldier, each stood frozen, gazing up at these strange ships falling towards their planet. And when the capsule struck the ground, they struck as one, the impact shaking the planet to its core. After the blast wave from their landing hit, none were left standing, and the few buildings that had remained were no more. The Castigi had been at war. They were fighting an enemy who believed only in the purism of the Castigi race and people. The enemy was winning. War crimes and other atrocities were a daily occurrence. Men, women, or children, any who looked sideways at the enemy combatants, were killed. Citizens were stolen off the street and tortured. Food and water were luxuries many didn't have. Those who survived the initial onslaught generally didn't last much longer. In the corner of the local city, the resistance had been fighting back in an attempt to end the fight quickly. The enemy had kidnapped families and were in the process of threatening the resistant fighters. The families were on their knees, hands tied, guns to their heads. "Drop your weapons and walk into the light. Your families are forfeit in the next 30 seconds. The captain shouted towards the resistant fighters. The falling eggs had given him pause, causing him to look towards the sky in confusion. One egg landed around 100 meters away. The blast wave knocked everyone to the ground. Dust filled the air. As the captain and his men were struggling to regain their footing, a giant biped 3 meters tall and laden with heavy black armor between the resistance and the regime soldiers. 1 second, there was only the capsule. The next, this thing shimmered into being. "Freeze! We'll kill them if you come any closer." The captain screamed at the newcomer to halt, nerves strung out on a live wire. His soldiers were petrified by the entrance, and who wouldn't be? The biped's head swiveled toward the captain, made eye contact, and then the captain dropped. His head had imploded, a targeted subsonic weapon. "Drop your weapons. Release the civilians." A deep, robotic voice came from the new arrival. "Prepare for surrender. You will be treated as enemy combatants and brought to trial for the crimes you have committed. Resistance is futile." All but one did as the newcomer commanded. Perhaps the soldier had hoped to take over from the late captain. Perhaps he truly believed the propaganda his side was spreading. He opened fire on the mysterious figure, bullets flying across the space. At point-blank range, there was no chance he would miss. When the bullet struck the creature and rebounded back towards the point of origin, seemingly supercharged, some missed the triggerman and impacted the wall behind him with such amplification that the wall crumbled into nothingness. Of the soldier, all that remained was a boot. The remaining combatants started to drop their weapons, both sides emerging from the tunnels and wrecked buildings. When a shot was fired, be it in anger or hysteria, the response was quick and unyielding. The silence was palpable. Smoke rose in the distance, burning ozone. The remnants of the plunge through the atmosphere filled the air. There will be peace. Over the next few days, new ships began to appear over the battlegrounds, originally white, but now scarred with the signs of space travel. They had large red crosses visible from many kilometres away. These ships descended gracefully, floating downward to land softly on the hilly fields afar. People in various garbs would stream out carrying all sorts of different apparatus. The Castigi would often see them working to free those entrapped, or transporting those who were broken back to the ship for support. The humans had brought doctors and nurses as well. The Juri, like their ancestors, were peacekeepers, advisors, and spiritual leaders. They prided themselves on their ability to walk into a battlefield and command peace. Their superior technology lent itself to the mysticism surrounding the group and gave them the upper hand in conflicts, where their presence alone was not enough to stop the fighting. Over the next half-century, the Juri maintained a presence on Castigi, offering their service as an imperial third party in disputes, and negotiating treaties between nations. Leaders from the original war were tried, sentenced, and their punishments carried out. For the first time in many years, there was peace.